the book of Luke is very popular around this time. There's something that I saw that was like, if you start at the beginning of the month, by the time you get to Christmas, you'll kind of understand why people are celebrating it. And I mean, realistically, Christmas wasn't Jesus' birthday. I understand that's the what some people recognize it for and what they choose to remember it for, and that's totally fine, because I'm all up for anything that's gonna be that's gonna point people toward Christ. But something that's very interesting in the book of Luke that I had spoken about before, but I think it's kind of worth repeating to help encourage somebody that may be feeling kind of down because of everything that happened this year. So a lot of people talk about Zacchaeus and the sycamore tree, and I believe it's in chapter 19 of the book of Luke. And a lot of people talk about Jesus, which is always an amazing thing. And a lot of people talk about Zacchaeus, but not a lot of people talk about the tree. And like I said, I'll try to keep this short, like you asked, but the tree in that story is important to me because it was the way that Zacchaeus was able to see Jesus. And he's a pretty short dude, and all the people that were gathering around made it very difficult for him to see Christ physically, see him. So he climbs in this tree, and Jesus sees him and calls him by his name, man. Tells him to come down and tells him, I'm coming to your house. And people can say whatever they want about Zacchaeus. Some people thought he was a sinner. I mean, he was. We all are. But people had their opinions about Zacchaeus, but people's opinions about Zacchaeus didn't really matter to Jesus. And in terms of the tree, I wonder, man, like, how many times, like, had he walked past that very tree? You know what I'm saying? Like just going to do something or going to, visit someone or just whatever. Like, how many times did he walk past that tree and didn't think anything of it, man? It's like, it's crazy because you don't understand how important something can be to you that you may have seen every day, that you may have taken for granted, that you may have not even paid attention to or been aware of. But there comes a time when God uses this thing that you consider to be very arbitrary and random, and it ends up being a method in which you're able to connect with him. Now, I'm certainly not suggesting that without the trees, Zacchaeus would not have, seen Jesus. I think there was definitely there's nothing random about, anything that's happened in the Bible. All of it was planned. I believe that Christ would have found Zacchaeus out, even without the tree, but the tree is in the story, so it has some importance. And what I glean from that is there are things that, in our daily lives that we can pass by, that we don't consider important, that we can overlook, and those can be the very things that God will use to help us make a connection with him. Like, people, I think that Christianity gets this really inaccurate rap, that everything is always tidied up, and is presented to you in this nice bow. And if you ask God for something, that you're always going to get it if you believe. And that's not the case, man, because realistically, there are people, faithful people in the eyes of God, that have prayed for things. I want a healthy baby, and the baby dies. God, get rid of this cancer for me, and you end up dying from cancer. Does that mean that God didn't hear their prayer? Does that mean that God, is a liar? Certainly not, man. But the point in this life isn't to get what we want. The point in this life is to know that God is able. And that gives us the strength to get through things. You look at the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and what they said. We don't know if God, well, I'm paraphrasing, we don't know if God will save us, but we know that he can. And he did. He saved them. And I'm not saying that it's always going to work out like that. I'm not saying that the things that we want in life are always going to come to fruition. But what I'm suggesting, and I'll bring this to a close, so I feel like I'm already going over time, is God will always make a way. And it's very important that we're always looking Maybe Zacchaeus, that was the first time he ever noticed that tree. But I guarantee you that that tree ended up being very important to him on that day, because he understood that if I utilize this thing, if I look at this thing beyond what I think it is, or maybe what I've not considered it to be, this can be something that can help me get closer to God. He recognized that that tree was something that he could use to get closer to God, and that's the point that I'm trying to bring out with this. There may be things that all of us are struggling with, and this is the very thing that we can use to get closer to God. I think that, something like this is very relevant to this pandemic, because there are a lot of situations that are challenging to all of us, whether it be financially, whether it be health-wise, whether it be whatever. And we have a tendency to only want to approach God through things that are comfortable and things that are beautiful. But we serve a God that is mighty, man, and He's able to do beautiful things even in grotesque situations. I was talking about people that have lost children and have died to cancer. But I have a friend who has had quite a few miscarriages, and she's able to relate. She's able to relate to people that have had miscarriages and encourage them. But if she never would have had any of those miscarriages, could she be able to relate to those people? Probably not. Sometimes God uses pain in our life to cause a connection. If I'm just walking down the street and I see you and I'm like, hey man, what's up? What's this, the common response people will give? Oh, I'm fine. It's very disingenuous, you know what I mean? It's very, very just kind of, all right, whatever. It's like a rushed answer where you really don't think about it. You can have the worst day in the world and tell somebody, oh, I'm doing fine. But think about how different that conversation is going to be if I'm in the waiting room of a hospital because my mom is having surgery, and you're in the waiting room of a hospital because your wife is potentially about to lose her child, and we start a dialogue. That conversation is going to be a lot more sincere than just, yeah, I'm having a good day. So the point that I'm bringing out, as I close this, is that we need to be looking at everything that God has created and be aware that situations that we may want to run away from, situations that we may not even be paying attention to, these can be the very things that God can use to bring us closer to Him. Much like Zacchaeus in that tree. I haven't really heard too many sermons about the tree, but I think the tree was just important to the story as Zacchaeus is, because there was a reason that tree was there. There's nothing that's random or arbitrary about our lives. God has everything done for a purpose, and yeah, He allows us to make choices, but every instance, every person, every situation that we find ourselves in life is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to grow closer to God. Maybe God is using that very thing that we're ignoring to bring us closer to Him, and I just think that that's worth consideration. Maybe there's something that you or I or anybody that's going to watch this is in question about. Maybe they're not thinking about it at all. I don't know, but my point is, don't underestimate God to use anything and everything to bring us closer to Him, to have His love shown to us through those things. People only want to look for God in the pretty stuff, but you got to look at the cross. That was probably one of the most grotesque situations physically that somebody could have seen. But think about what came out of that grotesque situation. My salvation, your salvation, everybody's salvation that will confess Christ as Lord and be baptized